Well, I was going to use a box, but my wife grabbed a clear box for me. So on this table, I have the future. The future is drones. So today I want to pass along some of the information that I've learned doing some research for drones. I've done research for work. I've been doing research for work as well as for just for personal use. And then this speech actually dovetailed in everything really nicely. And I was like, oh, cool. I know what I'm talking about. So why are drones? Some of you might ask, why are drones relevant? Well, according to Forbes magazine, there are 1 million drone registrations with the Federal Aviation Administration. Now, those don't actually count to register. I could register, if these were all mine, this is actually a work drone, but if I was going to register all these, that would just be one registration number. So it doesn't, that 1 million isn't actually the number of drones that are registered, it's just the people that are registered. So in this speech, I'm going to talk about the recreational side of drones, the commercial side of drones, and some of the aids that the FAA has put in place to help us fly legally. So to start it off, let's talk about the fun stuff. So most people, when they think about drones, they think of them for recreational use. They think of one or two things. They think of little outdoor not really little, but outdoor flyers like this flying around the park. It's seen a few trees, should we say. Or they think of little micro flyers like this, and that can fly around the house. They're pretty safe. Or drones that have cameras for flying. But they're also, they talk about, what people don't know is there's a ginormous racing industry for drones. So this bottom picture right here, and I don't know, I think that's a different race, but there's actually, this is a race from, this was from 2 years ago, and it was in Dubai, where according to The Verge, a 15-year-old from Britain named Luke Bannister, he got first place and won $250,000 for winning this race, which I wish I could win that amount of money, but I'm not that good. So last year, according to Newswire, it's not by the same company, it's sponsored by a company named DRL, but the World Championship will be in Saudi Arabia, so in September. So if you guys want to go, feel free. Aside from recreational uses, there are commercial uses, and almost wrong photo. So according to AT&T's website, they have a new device called Flying Cow. Now this is not it. COW actually stands for the Cell on Wings. So it's a mobile cell tower, and according to their website, the Flying Cow is providing wireless connectivity to customers in up to a 40 square mile area. It flies on a tether, which you can see going down from that top one. Hooks up to a little trailer and flies 200 feet up in the air, and it's got better coverage than any other temporary cell site. Last year, it was actually used for the first time in Puerto Rico right after the Hurricane Maria to help provide cell service down. Another company that is doing things, this is actually a company called Zipline Medical, and it is a logistics company that's based here in California, and they're working with the Tanzanian and Rwandan government, and currently it transports 20% of Rwanda's blood supplies, and they're trying to expand into Tanzania. After that, according to their website, they will be the largest drone delivery service in the world. A personal story for me is, so these pictures were taken, this is my work drone. The propellers are off for safety right now, but I took these pictures. Now, the picture up on the upper left, that is, so I work on ports, and to give you a sense of scale, this little guy over there, that's a semi-trailer. So all those boxes are trailers, so you can get up, really good shots. The second one, not as good a shot, but it's actually important because of that little dot right there. That actually is a LA Port police officer, one of several that I got to talk to that day. We had done our research, and there was legalities for the Port of LA that don't apply here at school, or anywhere outside of the port. So I got to learn about some of the legalities that day, and then that brings me to some of the systems, and I learned from them some of the systems that the FAA has put in place for letting us fly safely and know about it instead of running comms. So some of the general drone safety tips from the FAA's website are: you register your drone, you stay below 400 feet, you stay in line of sight so you can actually see your drone, and you have to do your research, know the FAA for aerospace restrictions, and among others, there's a whole list of them if you want to look at the website, but don't fly and drive, or drink and fly. That's the wrong way to say it around. Anyways. There's an attorney, Brandon Perry. He boils the rules for flying commercially down to this quote. Essentially, you can use a drone as long as it is less than 55 pounds within eyesight by a certified remote pilot in command. That's their exact phrase, and you can go up to 400 feet. There's also an app that you put on your phone called Before You Fly. Now, what this does is allows you, this is actually, right here, this is actually school. You can look it up, and it'll tell you what the status is for the actual area you're in, and it tells you the circles are a 5-mile radius around airports. Now, they're not, the way that the FAA designates airports is not just a landing strip and everything. They actually use helicopters, like I believe that's Fullerton Municipal. This is a hospital in the area. So it's not, you wouldn't drive by it and go, oh, that's a landing strip. So you can plug this in and it's a live update, but the FAA does, on the website they say, don't rely on this, make sure you know your rules, so it comes down to if you're actually flying. And, so in conclusion, drones are becoming integrated into our culture. From everyday recreation to weekend commercial use, to the unknown future, they're becoming more and more popular and are being used all over the world. That being said, anybody that wants to fly a drone should do their research ahead of time and know what they're talking about.
So Emily, share with us your thoughts.
Okay. So the central idea was why are drones relevant in talking about the recreational use, the commercial use, and the FAA regulations about it. I really liked how you said the future was drones in the beginning. It was like a nice attention grabber. Also, you're well researched and you had lots of good sources which you cited. However, some improvements were sometimes during the transitions you got a little quieter and almost mumbly, which was like okay, I could hear you, but for the future. But that was good. Besides that, and the flying cow joke was really good. Just like if you have like a transitionary slide between it, so you can delay it as like a punchline sort of thing. I thought it was really great though, and it was excellent with the aids that you brought them in person. I really liked that, and I learned a lot. So.
Well, you sort of use the visual aids, the three drones as your attention device, and since they're already up there, and they're up there even as you're getting set up, it doesn't have quite the same impact that it would have if there was some kind of reveal. That's something that you could plan on if you were doing it in another context. I did think that you made a very clear identification of what your topic was. You also have a statement of what your purpose is. It's a little, I guess I'll call it the Napoleon kind of topic. It's a little general. It probably could come down a step so that you could be talking about the functions or guidelines about drone use, something along those lines, as opposed to I'm just going to share with you kind of stuff that I know sort of thing. Yeah, it's something that's a little bit more precise. It's not that it was bad. I'm just thinking it would give you a little bit more focus, and I think it would also feel a lot more developed if you did that. And you've got some pretty good information about justifications when you talk about how many people are registered to operate drones. I thought that was interesting. And like, this is the future. When you say it's the future, I'm trying to figure out, so why is it the future? It's the future. I can see, for example, some delivery things, but I'm sure that there are other things that we use drones for that you mentioned that you ought to be talking about. That it's going to be easier to do all kinds of commercial jobs as a consequence of having drones. Checking for instance, problems along transmission lines or pipelines. I think that would be one of those things that's coming up. The aerial photography, if you're doing surveying and that sort of thing. Security issues, I'm sure that I think there's a little bit more that you could kind of pack in there to give us the explanation about why that is the future, so that we could then see why this is not just a subject that's interesting because it's about flying stuff. It's about something that, like you said, it is the future that we're going to be dealing with here. I thought there was a really solid preview also. The different kinds of drones that you listed, I'm not exactly sure what the difference between them is, except their size, and that people play with the one and work with the other, and the one in the middle looks like Willie Nelson. I don't know. It's a little bit problematic. I think you need a little bit clearer explanation about what's going on there. I did hear information being cited early on in the presentation, and it was pretty consistent. I'm not sure that there were always, like, some of the information felt a little bit incomplete. When you were talking about, for example, that story that you have about interacting with the police officer, and next thing I know you're talking about, well, at least I don't have to run away. I'm going, well, what? There's something happened here. There's something that's missing from the story, and that felt a little bit incomplete. But that wasn't a citation. That's your telling us something that happened here. And that's the kind of stuff that makes a speech interesting. You've got an incident that happened. You point to the police officer that's in the picture, and then you say, and then I had a conversation with the police officer about the rules. I'm going, well, why did you have a conversation with the police officer about those rules? And what do you mean later on, so you don't have to run from the cops? I'm going, that sounds suspiciously like you had an encounter because you were operating the drone, and we're not getting the story there, and that feels like it's a hollow point in the speech, and it shouldn't be that way. It should just be the way you're telling the story. So fill it in a little bit more. Like I said, it's organized topically. It's easy to follow. That part's fine. The visual materials, the objects are interesting. We get good images from the pictures that you're showing us. I think that's fine, and you show them to us at the right time. I like the code joke too, as a matter of fact, and I'd agree with Emily that it would have a little bit more punch if it was timed more effectively. I think that's the case as well. I did think there was one spot where you had some guidelines, some of those rules, where maybe a couple of bullet points would have been a good thing to do for some of the rules that you were talking about. But not everything needed to be bullet pointed. We certainly didn't need an extensive list, but there were like 3 or 4 things that seemed like they were important. For example, one of the things that was a little unclear, I love the screenshot that you have of the phone app for your drone. But what I didn't understand is I see those circles, I see the radius. Does that mean that you're not allowed to operate a drone within a 5-mile radius of the municipal airport or the helicopter pads? Or is there some other restriction that's going on there? That was a little unclear to me. So you kind of introduce the app, you've got a good picture of it, I'm getting information about it, and then I don't really quite know what I'm supposed to get from it. And so that's another one of those places where it felt a little less complete. Emily has picked up on something that I'm going to point out to not just you, but a lot of people. we're not emphasizing the delivery aspects yet, but you're going to discover a lot of people have this tendency when they're doing transitions, or when they're done with an idea, or when they're uncertain, and they're kind of thinking out loud about a pause. Some people have vocalized pauses, ums, ers, ahs. You just drop your voice and kind of mumble, it's like you get to the next point. And then you start speaking again, and then you get to something. And people have a tendency to do that. That's something that you'll want to watch out for and avoid doing in the future. Not a big deal now, but like the next speech is all about presentation issues, and you want to be consistent in your presentation. So that's something ahead of time that you can watch for. All right, thank you.